Hello and welcome to our Bugcrowd series, Unleashing Human Creativity for Proactive Security. This is our CISO Perspectives. My name's Chris Cubbage. I'm the editor with MySecurity Media, and this is a series that we're doing with CISOs and hackers for those perspectives with Bugcrowd. Today we're joined by Dina Mathers. They're in the US. She's the Chief Information Security Officer with Carvana. Dina, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And Nick Mckenzie, great to have you back. Nick, the Chief Information and Security Officer with Bugcrowd. And you're on the other side of the world as well today, Nick, in the UK. But thanks for joining us.
Always a pleasure, never a chore, Chris.
Great. Now, Dina, we've obviously had a pre-interview session. Carvana is a fascinating business that you're working with a lot of responsibilities in terms of that critical role being the CISO. Maybe a brief introduction to Carvana, and then we'll move into your role as CISO.
Sure. So Carvana has revolutionized how consumers buy and sell vehicles online in the continental US. You essentially can order or purchase a used vehicle through our website or our mobile application. And in some states and some cities, you can actually get the vehicle delivered to your home the same day, or you can choose to pick up the vehicle from a vending machine.
Yep. Now, if anyone isn't aware of that, that's worth having a look at. So these are multi-story vending machines, but I imagine it's still a fundamentally an online business.
Absolutely, yeah. Carvana is certainly a technology company. All of the consumers have to interact with our website and mobile application. So we have a large technology footprint. We are a cloud-first company. We operate in all different clouds, and we have a lot of technology to support our business.
Okay, now the role of CISO, I take it you've been in that chair for some time, but just how have you structured it, and potentially even over the life of the business, has that changed?
Yeah, it's definitely changed. I've been with Carvana just over 2 years. We have a team of 10 who are focused on our cybersecurity program. We have application security, our governance, risk, and compliance team, and then proactive security services, so security architecture, security engineering, our threat and vulnerability management program. And then we have reactive security services, which is our security operations center and incident response.
Okay. Well, look, that obviously leads us into Bugcrowd and how you use a platform like Bugcrowd. And you are continental US, but what are some of the advantages that Bugcrowd brings, and some of the services that you utilize?
Yeah, we use Bugcrowd for our bug bounty program and our vulnerability disclosure program. One of the key benefits is that we can tap into potential that would otherwise not be available to us. As a US company, all of our employees are based in the United States. Bugcrowd employs security researchers all over the world to continuously evaluate our externally facing infrastructure, web applications, APIs, etc., to proactively report vulnerabilities to us. And to be completely transparent, that the most engaged security researchers on our program are not located in the United States. Most of our active researchers are from international locations, including India and others.
Right. And what are the touch points within your team structure? There was a couple there in engineering, proactive security and the like, even web applications. What are the touch points with Bugcrowd? And I'll come back to Nick in terms of what they generally find with that. But is it multiple team members dealing with Bugcrowd, or do you find it through Central Point?
Yeah, so we actually have our bug bounty program under our application security team and function. And so we get notified of any new Bugcrowd submissions through an integration with Slack, and our entire team's on that thread. And then we go into the platform and either triage, or oftentimes it's already triaged by Bugcrowd. And then we would accept the submission and award the researcher through the platform. But in general, we have one person who's accountable, but we have coverage for the whole team to avoid a single point of failure.
And Nick, that's a good segue to you. Do you find that's normal for Bugcrowd in terms of as Dina mentioned, there's a couple of service streams that they use. Who are the general touch points that you find within the teams, and application security being one?
Yep. No, look, what Dina mentions is spot on, right, in terms of the integrations and the workflows. Look, any CISO, any security team wants to get that vulnerability identified to them the quickest. The way to do it is, using our technology through our platform, is to integrate into what you already have internally, be vis-a-vis your Slacks, your Jiras, your Snows, whatever the customer's using. We do a direct integration to get that vulnerability that's identified to the security teams at the earliest.
How much insight do you give to the client on the services side? So, say with the bug bounty program for a company like Carvana, is it you just put it out to or is it a very defined scope, or do you put it out in terms of, do your best and report in as to what you find?
Oh, generally speaking, that's up to the customer to define the program scope. So we have a defined scope. We try to be inclusive of all of our, domains. As an example, our mobile applications are in scope for our program. And we do partner with our customer success manager and account manager team to make sure we're maximizing our investment in Bugcrowd. And even to understand, is the scope appropriate? Are the reward ranges appropriate based on the industry? Because we want to incentivize hackers to participate in our program, but we're competing with all of Bugcrowd, customers. And so that's a regular conversation that we have once a month with our customer success manager.
Great. And Nick, that relevant question for you as well. How do you control that on the bug bounty side at your end, or do you find that the system works quite well at your end?
Yeah, look, it's similar to what Dina says, that the customer defines what the scope of the program is, right? Whatever risk management tolerance thresholds need to be in place, we all consider that. We take that on board right up front when you set up a program to ensure that the customer gets ultimately what they want. We do advise and we do guide in terms of reward ranges, payouts, researchers, and obviously, we have the power within our platform to curate, I suppose, researchers from certain skills, attributes, locations, and then provide that as an avenue for giving it to Dina or Carvana and making sure that they get the best outcomes based on the selection criteria. Yeah. But mate, that's all done up right up at the front of the program. Obviously, we have touch points along the way, think of it as turning off valves and taps to either increase new researchers, try different researchers, maybe change the reward levels, and/or if Dina wants to increase or decrease the scope, that's obviously within her control as well. But it's quite typical with most customer engagements.
Right. And Dina, I suppose the key question for you as the CISO is, how much assurance and reassurance does that provide, knowing that that's happening in the back end? How does that, I suppose, sense of feeling does that provide to you and to the board as well?
Yeah, Bugcrowd has been a really key investment for our cybersecurity program. There's obviously a shortage of skills gap, and truthfully, we can't employ everybody to work for our company full time. So again, we view Bugcrowd as an extension of our team, and it really serves as a force multiplier. Bugcrowd has actually helped us discover some systemic issues with our APIs that we needed to prioritize as an organization, which we did. We consistently provide updates at least quarterly to our board on the engagement of Bugcrowd, the number of submissions, the criticality of those submissions, how much we've even paid, just because everybody understands and recognizes the importance of hiring hackers to discover these vulnerabilities and report them responsibly, because the adversaries that are going to find it, you're just going to find out too late.
Yeah. And I, as you say, it's a bit of a multiplier for you. You've got a team of 10, but
Correct.
That's relatively still a tight team when you think about the business that you're in and the threat landscape. that allows you to scale as well? Do you find that you have been able to scale those services and how you use Bugcrowd over time?
Yep, absolutely. So as part of the budget or physical, planning cycle, we always ensure that we have adequate funds to increase our research or reward pool. Because again, we want to maximize the investment in our program. And then internally, we have developed a security champions program to kind of help evangelize security across our disparate engineering teams. And they also get trained on Bugcrowd and other technologies that we have to help us proactively identify security risk and vulnerabilities to our infrastructure and mobile applications, web applications, APIs, etc.
Right. And Nick, I think the other one I had was, given the profile of the company, does at your end, do they understand who the client is in terms of their profile and the like, or is it very focused on find a vulnerability in a web application, or do they get a broader brief as to who they're working for? Because I'm just thinking outside of the US, there'd be a high motivation to want to get that body of work and wanting to get within that program. I suppose two questions: how competitive is it based on the scope of work that they've provided? How much insight do they get?
Yeah, look, it's a great question. I think there's a couple of questions there though. One, the beauty with the bug bounty process versus, say, a traditional penetration test is, and the mindset of a bug bounty hunter versus, say, a pen test is completely different. They get time to absorb and understand the business process of the customer, in this case, Carvana. It's not like you would send them out on a 1 or 2 week engagement. They really get engaged. They would go through all the nooks and the crannies to understand where all the widgets are, where all the APIs are. They take that time and effort to really break those down and understand them, and then stick with the customer through the rewards process and the submissions. So one of the great benefits of doing an ongoing bug bounty versus a penetration test, funnily enough, is just obviously the scale aspect that you mentioned, Chris, but also the fact that you now have this, this massive amount of people with institutionalized knowledge of the customer and their processes and how the technology ticks and works. And that's just so valuable. It's you just can't believe it. And then that comes through as part of the submissions. You start attracting, more and more talents. You start getting really good researchers who invest personally in themselves to stay on that customer and keep doing it. And that's really where the value comes out of the bug bounty, and sort of understanding the knowledge of the customer and just leveraging off that knowledge, I suppose.
Yeah, that's definitely where I was heading, is that almost a team sport approach. But, I understand someone who can say, yeah, I've been working on the Carvana bounty, then that's a good one from their perspective in terms of even just on their resume, so to speak. Dina, maybe come to get some more perspectives from you. Your key priorities as a CISO, and there might be 2 questions here, and I tend to ask multiple questions, but the key priorities for you as a CISO, and then we're going to come into your reporting priorities in terms of your KPIs and whether they might be different. But yeah, where do you sit in terms of your key priorities?
There's a lot of priorities being in the role. I think from a people perspective, it's how do I make sure that the people that I have on my team are happy and they stay engaged? So I'm a huge advocate and supporter for professional development. There are a ton of webinars, local cybersecurity events here in Phoenix, Arizona. So I'm constantly sharing that information with my team and encouraging them to take time to get trained up. Hackers and threats and everything, they're evolving, and we need to stay ahead of it. So that's from a people perspective for my team. For my extended team, meaning all of the employees and contingent workers and everybody works for Carvana, at least it's been around, how do I enable the business to operate securely and not be a department of no. So it's understanding what our risk appetite is and where to prioritize our limited time and resources from a cyber perspective, using a risk-based methodology. So taking the results of like a risk assessment as an example, and making sure that we're mitigating the highest risks that exist internally for Carvana. I think one thing that is a little bit underrated from a leadership perspective, but it goes a long way, is to your comment before, security is a team sport. Like, we wouldn't be successful without the collaboration from various team members. And so I'm always trying to find opportunities to recognize the individuals who have directly contributed to our cybersecurity program, whether it's through formal recognition programs, like we have something called Pavers every month, or informally praising them, praising the individuals in Slack. I send out a monthly recap every month on what we've accomplished in the last month, maybe emerging threats we've mitigated. And I always make it a point to call out those teams who have made improvements to our program. And then from a technology perspective, I think a lot of companies are under cost optimization efforts. So it's making sure I spend our company money like our own. How do I maximize the investments that we have and not necessarily get distracted by the next shiny object? If we're going to make an investment, make sure that we have no other alternatives. Like, we need it, it's going to address a risk, and not investing in it is going to pose a greater risk than allocating funds to mitigate. And so I'm always challenging the team to make sure that we fully utilize our investments, because there's so many companies that are well-intended, and then sometimes the technologies become shelfware. And then from a process perspective, just trying to, again, build those relationships and make the process to engage us however they want to be engaged. They can send us an email, like hallway conversation, a Slack message, but trying to simplify the process and remove some of the bureaucracy of the processes that sometimes happen for large organizations. So it's really about that. And then just like tactically, with it being the end of the year, I am focused on our cyber insurance renewal. And so some of the metrics that I'm able to collect from Bugcrowd helps me articulate the improvements that we've made to our program over time.
Wonderful. I like the way you keep it still relatively straightforward, people, technology, and process, and you stick to those fundamentals. One question came to mind in terms of Bugcrowd is it where does that fit? And is it a investment or sort of a business operation? How do you define it?
Yeah, we review it. I think I would say it's probably all of it, because one thing that Bugcrowd allows you to do is extract reports to figure out, compared to your peers in the same industry, how quickly are you accepting submissions? How many, again, compared to peers, how many submissions do you have? And then we can use that to make sure that we're engaging those hackers and rewarding them on a timely basis. Then they're more likely to participate in our program. So those are key metrics that I look at, again, to maximize our investment in the crowd.
And Nick, to you in that, and how do you find Bugcrowd's generally perceived? Technology, people, or process?
What's our priorities?
No, how's Bugcrowd normally perceived by the clients? Where do you sort of fit within those fundamentals?
Yeah, look, each client's different, right? Depending on what their agenda and their business profile, their risk appetite, and whatnot. So, look, we, just like Dina mentions, we do have a lot of reporting intelligence that comes in the platform that benchmarks, I suppose, a customer to a bunch of other customers, seeing how their performance is going across many different spectrums, whether it's rewards, whether it's SLAs, whether it's the triage response time, you name it, right? Assets. We do have the power to draw down and obviously provide those data points to a customer. Traditionally, we'll do them in the form of a QBR. So every quarter, the account management team with the TCMS team effectively sit down with a customer, go through those metrics, go through those responses, go through the outcomes, how many P1s, submissions and whatnot. And then decisions are generally drawn off the back of them, right? Maybe we need to pivot. Maybe you need to pull another lever. Maybe we need to change scope, et cetera, et cetera. So it's quite fluid and dynamic in terms of how we both report, but obviously then the customer that makes the call at the end of the day about how they want to tic-tac through the threat landscape.
The other one we had was the frameworks applied, Dina, and your reporting to the board. Because I think, as Nick sort of highlighted there, the metrics that you get out of Bugcrowd will obviously then feed back into your board reports. And obviously there's a return on investment from Bugcrowd, be it quarter to quarter or even annually as well. But yeah, your key frameworks and report frameworks for the board.
Yeah, so to measure our cybersecurity program holistically, we use the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, Cybersecurity Maturity Framework. And so every quarter, as we make improvements to our security posture, we're recalculating our maturity and then reporting to the board. Well, I'm reporting to the board on these specific projects were completed over the quarter, and this is the direct impact to our security for govern, identify, detect, protect, respond, and recover, the pillars that are involved with the NIST cybersecurity framework. And then separately, we do have operational key performance metrics, which include some things like the number of submissions in the quarter, the criticality of the submissions, how much have we paid to security researchers over the quarter, so that we can, again, make sure that we're maximizing those investments. We also have like mean time to patch, mean time to respond to incidents, the number of incidents. There's a lot of metrics that are compiled, but those are just a few.
And Nick, and the framework NIST, I take it you can report back, Bugcrowd, in terms of that workflow and outcomes, you can report back to that framework so it's consistent, so there's no sort of conflict in the structure of the reporting?
We report a degree of control metrics in relation to what NIST sort of manages as a framework. Internally within Bugcrowd, we're the same as Dina and their team as well. We use that as a cybersecurity maturity reporting metric that goes up to the board as well. And that just really sort of defines our own internal security teams and broader enterprises evolving journey of becoming best of breed.
Wonderful. Last one, well, there's a couple here. We want to refer back to the Inside the Mind of a CISO report, Dina. And obviously Bugcrowd produces a range of reports, and we do have them within this series as well. But it's getting your perspectives. I think I always say people with a real job, and you are one with a real job. So you have responsibilities, but it's really important to get those perspectives from you. And there's a number here on page 8 of the Inside the Mind of a CISO report. We'll have the link in the show notes. But you mentioned, and top of the page, this is for the security leaders' top concerns for the board, is cyber insurance premiums is at the top. And you mentioned you're about to review your cyber insurance premiums. How is that much of a challenge? Are you finding much change there for cyber insurance? Or is it a matter of just keeping those premiums low? Do you find that they're pushing back and trying to raise them all the time?
It kind of depends. I feel like cyber insurance premiums sometimes are a lagging indicator. I did meet with our insurance broker recently, and it does sound like the premiums are declining slightly. There's a lot of factors and variables that go into your organization's premiums, like your maturity, the controls that you've implemented, what the market is, the number of personally identifiable records that you have. So there's a lot that goes in there. But I will say part of my job is making sure that I can articulate all of this improvements that we've made to our cybersecurity program in the last year to make sure we are getting the most favorable rates. And hopefully we have multiple underwriters who are interested in covering us versus, a program that maybe is less mature where they don't want to accept the risk. So I think just given the fact that I'm preparing for that now is somewhat top of mind. There's also obviously a lot of emerging regulatory requirements, especially in the United States, for publicly traded companies, and Carvana is one of them. So we need to report any sort of material cybersecurity incidents to the Security Exchange Commission within 4 business days. So making sure when that came out, which was almost a year ago, not quite, making sure that there was alignment with the executive leaderships on how would we determine that it was material, because there's not a lot of guidance in there. So there was some, over reporting, I think, and the SEC has updated its guidelines to make it a little bit more clear, but there's constantly evolving regulatory obligations. Thankfully we're not an international company, but I know with when GDPR came out, there was a lot of companies making sure that they can actually comply with the requirements. So.
And we talked about reassurance from Bugcrowd. I take it when you're talking to insurers and even regulators as well, the reassurance that a platform like Bugcrowd provides that you can revert back to say, look, we have been doing the hard work and using reputable providers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the fact that we have a team of hundreds of researchers, we would love to go public. We're just trying to make sure that we're prepared for that because we're anticipating a large volume of submissions. But even the fact that our program is private, we have over 150 researchers invited and actively participating in our program. So to say almost while I'm sleeping in the States, somebody is continuously looking at our infrastructure, gives me at least a little bit of peace of mind.
Very good. And it does, it's that argument to keep those premiums low as well, obviously, and lowering the risk, which is most important. The other one here, Dina, is regulatory obligations and legal exposure. They go kind of hand in hand. And you've got 52 states that you have to deal with. And some do seem to sort of make their own decisions. How much sort of legal exposure and regulatory obligations are impacting you?
Yeah, we do have a lot of regulatory obligations. We partner with our legal team. So one example is the New York Department of Financial Services has their own cybersecurity regulatory requirements around managing a holistic cybersecurity program. And Carvana is included in scope because if a customer comes to purchase a vehicle and needs to finance, we provide them financing. And so it's very, I don't want to say pervasive, comprehensive is probably the term I would use. And then there are other states that are seem to be following their lead and creating state-specific cybersecurity requirements. And then to compound that, we have federal requirements or requirements if you're a publicly traded company. So we have one example is the Federal Trade Commission has a safeguards rule. It says essentially if any unencrypted, personally identifiable information is shared inadvertently, and there's over 500 customers that are impacted or users, you need to report as well. So we partner very closely with outside counsel and our internal legal team to make sure that we're constantly staying on top of emerging regulatory requirements, not only for cybersecurity, but also privacy as well.
I think there's another one here, and there's a whole rabbit hole of questions that you could go down there, but it's a massive body of work just on that side. And I think that's comes back to the importance of maintaining or having good cyber hygiene and the maturity model that you choose as well. The other one, sort of pre-session as well, you mentioned AI. Closing the skills gap with AI was here as well, and there's something that Bugcrowd provides now as well in terms of the AI side of Bounty. Where do you sort of fit with the challenges of AI, both using AI as a tool, but then also potentially the threat vector that it proposes?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, unfortunately. So adversaries are using AI, so they're being more sophisticated in their attacks. The old telltale sign about misspellings and phishing emails is no longer accurate. The attackers are also using AI for not only phishing emails, but any sort of tools and tactics for their attacks. So trying again to stay abreast on this is pretty challenging at times. And then from a technology perspective, we've been trying to make sure that we encourage the use of AI to gain some efficiencies on our team. So whether we're using AI to triage repeatable security events so that our SOC can handle higher efficacy security events is one example, or making sure that we're modifying our phishing simulation so that, historically everybody in the company would get the same email, in a 1 or 2 week period. And we invested in a technology that uses AI to create more real-like phishing emails based on the role within the organization. So I would get a different phishing email than our CFO, as an example. Yeah. So, it's always a race. I don't think I have the answer, but we're trying to make sure that stays at the forefront.
Nice. And Nick, to you with Bugcrowd and AI services, how are you finding that? There was sort of an announcement, I think, in Singapore earlier in the year that you're providing, I'll call it bug bounty services for AI, but how are you finding that sort of developing now or later in the year?
Yeah, I mean, again, Dina was spot on. Like, there's duality in the use of AI, right, as part of, usage from internal security teams, and then what the attackers are essentially using from AI from an external perspective. In terms of what we're seeing and the services that we do, obviously the boom of AI, its usage and weaving it into the digital fabric of many businesses, right, has, posed some challenges, right, has posed a whole bunch of new holes, has actually expanded, I suppose, the vulnerability or the attack surface when it comes to an attacker's perspective. And if it's not tested properly, right, if the business chooses to, launch with a new chatbot or some sort of integration with some sort of AI adoption into their business process that hasn't been security tested, be it for bias or be it for vulnerabilities, there's going to be problems, right? So yes, we are seeing a big uptick at the moment about AI for our AI testing services that look for issues in bias and vulnerability management when it comes to the usage of AI.
And I might clarify, those services are more for new sort of programs rather than from a business use of AI? It's more from, do you have an AI algorithm that you want tested or a new application that's using AI and then you test that?
Yeah. It depends what the business is launching. The way that we traditionally get engaged on these engagements is they're doing something. Again, we're doing a test at the moment with a big healthcare provider in Australia at the moment who's launching or has infused AI into one of their internal applications. They obviously want to test that it's not, one, spitting out the wrong information, e.g. there's bias with it, but two, that someone external can't abuse the AI to either get information through an excess of vulnerabilities that the adoption would have caused. So really two sort of big avenues from an AI LLM sort of front. It's the bias and it's the vulnerabilities that come, or the exploitation of the new vulnerabilities that come with the adoption of AI into an application.
Nice. And I think one other question to you, Dina, is do you find that the business is coming to you with AI ideas or AI application ideas and say, can we do this? Can we try that? And you said earlier, you don't want to be the office of no. But again, do you find that the business is coming to you with AI problems or questions? And just within the office of the CISO, are you the go-to?
Yeah, we actually have an AI task force that consists of our engineering leaders, information security leader, our privacy team, as well as our data governance team. And so we regularly meet to try to be the eyes and ears of the company, because to your earlier comment, Carvana is growing very exponentially, and I would love to think that I understand every single use case for AI across the company, but that's probably not accurate. However, we do have a relationship with our engineering team. So before they launched our chatbot that uses AI, we were involved in that and making sure that we couldn't prompt it to provide social security numbers or customer information or proprietary information. Like, can we manipulate the chatbot to return unwanted information? And so that's where I think the partnership with Bugcrowd could come in, because if we didn't have the staff to do that internally, you would certainly want to hire a third party to make sure that you're not inadvertently disclosing information for your customers, as one example. And there's multiple ways to do that. So.
And obviously, as Nick said, trying to get out of that bias. If you're all looking at it internally, you do need those external eyes to get rid of that. The last one is risk versus compliance. We've touched on that a little bit with your regulatory obligations and legal exposure. The last one is outcomes. Instead of approaching solutions through the lens of security silos and products, CISOs are focusing on outcomes, which, Dina, I take it would be your business outcomes. The structure that you have within Carvana and how you are sort of measured within the business, can you define that at all, or how would you define what outcomes are? Obviously quarterly reporting, but is that the real outcome that you provide?
No, so I think going back to the risk versus compliance, I think early on in my career in cybersecurity, I saw a lot of leaders taking a compliance approach to their information security program. So they would say, let's align our program to some compliance framework and, I don't know, let's say payment card industry, data security standards. We're going to align to that. And then we're going to get a report on attestation that we're compliant. But it was like almost like a checkbox activity. And so if you really establish a holistic cybersecurity program using an industry framework, whether it's NIST or ISO or any other framework, the outcome really is compliance. Because if you have an enterprise-wide program with your controls deployed appropriately, even if you make a risk-based decision, you can say, yes, this antivirus control is fully deployed across all of our endpoints, maybe, or no, it's partially deployed and we've made a risk-based decision not to deploy it on XYZ infrastructure. And so that is some of the outcomes that are like, the foundation needs to be set, and then you have like key performance indicators, key risk indicators that kind of measure your program's effectiveness, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. And I think to finish off there, Nick, in terms of those outcomes and the value that Bugcrowd provides to businesses and the scope that Bugcrowd has become, those outcomes from your perspective, obviously keeping the client happy, being able to sit down with the CISO and have a conversation like this, would be one of those outcomes. How would you just sort of define the outcomes for Bugcrowd and the services that you provide?
Yeah, I mean, our outcomes are really tailored towards what the customer expects from us, right? Whether it's, it could be anything from making sure that they want the really juicy P1s to come through because they're stretched internally from their own offensive security teams. Maybe that's a core outcome that they want, through to ongoing reassurance. Again, Dina was sort of talking earlier before this about, how do you sleep? How do you get comfort in sleeping at nighttime, right? Knowing that you've got 24/7 coverage from a bunch of researchers / ethical hackers, right? That's an outcome that we provide as well, right? It's that reassurance. And then there's other customers that have gone through the journey of bug bounty processes and actually got to a point where it's not so much the outcomes anymore. They'll always keep getting outcomes, but it's actually the revalidation that outcomes are on the decline, right? And that shows a fix of systemic control issues within the organizations. Because traditionally what you would see in an organization when you launch a bug bounty program is a lot of findings up front. It goes up. Again, you start adding more assets, it goes up and up and up and up again. But over time, what the security team should be doing is traceability back to, I suppose, a process internally, whether it's an application development issue, a staffing issue, a people issue, whatever, and really try and close down the crux of why that security vulnerability happened in the first place, right? Versus just continually finding findings all the time. So it's a bit of a balance between, again, what the customer's after. That goes back again to what type of business they are, how big they are, geographic footprint, how digital savvy they are they regulated, IT, OT. It really varies, mate, in terms of what the outcomes are. But generally, if you look at the thematics across the base, it's about finding those. It's about leveraging the talent to get those big P1s, P2s en masse. And it's about having that continuous ongoing validation assurance. But then over time, it's a revalidation. That's generally sort of what I see.
And nothing's constant, obviously, in business, but also within the technology domain, and particularly when you're seeing car vending machines being successful and booming as well. So my last question might be, Dina, when are we going to see a car vending machine in Australia? But we might leave that for another time. You're very much US-based and only in the US, as we often say as well. But Dina Mathers, the Chief Information Security Officer with Carvana, thank you so much for joining us today and those perspectives and insights. And Nick Mckenzie, the Chief Information and Security Officer with Bugcrowd, keeping you up late as well, Nick, there in the UK. Travel safe. But thank you very much for joining us today on the Bugcrowd Unleashing Human Creativity for Proactive Security and our CISO perspectives and insights. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Dina.
Thank you.